Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books. At Red Penguin Books, we work with authors of all types and genres. So whether you have a manuscript all ready to be published, maybe 300 sheets of loose leaf shoved in a drawer, or just an idea in your head, visit redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I'd also like to mention thebookfairies.org. The Book Fairies collect and distribute over 50,000 books every single month to those in need. So if you have some spare books lying around, or time, or a donation, please visit thebookfairies.org. Now on with our show. Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I am so excited to be joined by three amazing authors from all over the world today. Our first author, Krishna Sudhir, is, well, luckily he's hailing right here from the Bay Area, or a little south of that, here in America, and he's going to talk to us about Prince of Typgar. Next, Verona Willis-Brown, my neighbor here in New York. And Chris Laine is going to be joining us from New Zealand. So first up, Krishna is joining us with Prince of Typgar. I'm sure I just mauled that pronunciation, which Krishna is going to correct on me. Nujran and the Corpse in the Quadrangle. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, so...
how do I pronounce Typgar?
Well, it's a made-up name, so you have some license there, but Typgar is close enough, I think.
Typgar, okay, I didn't kill it too much.
No, not at all. The genre is fantasy fiction, so most of the names are made up. Some of them are actually anagrams. For example, the main protagonist, Nujran, is actually an anagram of the Indian mythology hero Arjun, and that's spelled A-R-J-U-N. So it's an anagram with an extra letter, if you like. And that happens to be the technique I adopted for making up a lot of the names and of people as well as places in the book.
Oh my gosh. So wait a minute. Explain to me how you did that with the anagrams to make up names, because I've always asked about names.
Yeah. So for example, in this particular book, which is the second in the trilogy, so I'm writing a trilogy. The first was Nujran and the Monks of Mira. This is the second, Nujran and the Corpse in the Quadrangle. This second book is set in a place called Folenark. And the word Folenark doesn't mean anything to anybody, but it's actually an anagram of California. So when I talk about Folenark, I'm talking about the state of the US that I live in, California. And, you know, you have the mountains of Erisa in the east, which are actually the Sierras. So I just take whatever names I see around me and I mix them up a little bit and you get the names of the characters. There's an old teacher in the book, you know, so Nujran is actually a young prince and it's set on a planet in a distant galaxy. So it's all fantasy fiction. But he has a teacher who's kind of an amalgam between Gandalf on the one hand from Lord of the Rings and Dumbledore from Harry Potter. But his name is Amsib. And that's an anagram of Bhishma, who's an ancient teacher in Indian mythology. Yeah. And if you go back to the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata, the young boy Arjun, who's the main protagonist of the epic series, was actually taught by this guy Bhishma. So I've taken the names, jumbled them up a bit, created the anagrams, but the story is, of course, very different. So it's kind of modern fantasy fiction, but inspired by ancient Indian mythology, if you like.
Krishna, I was gonna ask if it was based on the Mahabharata. That's one of my favorite books.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, I love that book. It's amazing. Yeah. That epic tale is just beyond belief. And I recently rewatched there's like that 7-part miniseries or 10-part miniseries of the Mahabharata. Do you know the one I'm talking about? It was.
Are you talking about the one by Peter Brooks? Or
that's the one made in the 90s.
Okay. Yes, exactly.
So yeah, when you said that your main character was Arjuna, and then you said Bhishma, I was like, oh no, this has to be.
You know these people, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, that's amazing. I'd love to read it now because yeah, that's one of my favorite Indian mythology or legends.
That's wonderful, great. Chris. That's wonderful. So, you know, when I was sitting down a few years ago deciding what I would write and settling on the genre of fantasy fiction, I thought, look, I'm inspired by fantasy fiction from all over the world. I loved Harry Potter's, I loved The Lord of the Rings, I loved Aragon, I loved Game of Thrones, and avidly watched every episode, sometimes 2 or 3 times. But I thought, I come from a land where fantasy fiction is something everybody grows up with in India, and it's called mythology, right? So all these wonderful stories of gods and goddesses and princes and princesses and kings and queens doing all kinds of wonderful things. And they do stuff that I think today's world would call superheroes, but it was normality for them, right? If a person levitated in Indian mythology, it was their natural ability to levitate. It was not a superpower. And I adopted the same strategy in the books. So there are people you meet in the books, who can do all kinds of crazy things, like, levitation is just a start, but people can tell you the exact position of the planet somebody else in by just closing their eyes and focusing on that. And there are other people who are mind readers and so on. But in my books, they're the natural abilities of these people, because I draw from Indian mythology. But I think I'm talking too much. So Verona and Chris about their books. Back to you.
You really want to go to India now.
There you go.
Yeah. Verona, now you got to find another spot on your list.
Exactly.
It's on my list too. I do have a list. It's on my list.
I think
India's on mine as well.
That's what we should do.
It is definitely on my list. Yes.
Krishna, I have to ask you a question. You said while you were talking that when you were thinking about what genre to write in, and that was that sentence just smacked me in the face. And I'm picturing you saying, I'd like to be a writer. Which genre should I write in?
Right.
Take
it's
back to that thought. That's the moment I want to hear about.
Okay, Stephanie, it's a long and convoluted story. I've spent most of my life as a physician and a cardiologist. So I grew up in India. I trained in medicine. I spent 9 years in Melbourne, not far from where Chris is, across the Tasman in New Zealand. And I worked in cardiology there. And then I came to UCSF in San Francisco. And I had a very enjoyable career in medicine and cardiology. But when I got to my 50s and asked myself, what's missing, right? Writing the second chapter of one's life, if you like. I thought, well, I always wanted to be a novelist, and I have 2 kids who are now 26 and 24. I read fantasy fiction to them a lot when they were growing up. It was a very nice shared experience, a bonding experience as a dad. And, quite often when the kids were falling asleep, it's easier to make things up than to read when you're tired at the end of a long day. Spent the entire day at work, you come back, and they're falling asleep at 9 p.m. And, I would just make it up. So I thought, I've done this before while they were falling asleep, so why not do it officially? Genre that came most naturally, like I said, I enjoy fantasy fiction on TV. I enjoy it in books. I like magical realism, the novels of Gabriel Garcia Marquez and so on. So it was a natural fit with that. But I was trying to hone down from, fiction, detective fiction. And then I thought, that's a little bit too close to what I watch every day. So I just veered off into fantasy. And maybe someday I'll return to detective fiction in the future. But for now, it's fantasy fiction. And I've enjoyed it.
I absolutely adore the deliberateness of your life choices.
Oh, thank you.
I think that is so fabulous that you actually came, here it is, it's, January 4th. People, 4 days ago were thinking about what am I going to change? And everybody's New Year's resolutions are probably shot to hell already because it's January 4th. But you actually sat there and said, I've accomplished all of this in my life. What do I want to do next? Gave it some deliberate thought and did it. I am loving every bit of what you just said. Forget about, the fabulous writing, just as a great learning method for all of us about life and making choices and going ahead with fulfilling a destiny. I think that's just amazing.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was actually New Year resolution 2016.
Wow.
To write the first book.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
And they say like 70% of the people already fell off the wagon, but you didn't.
Thanks. So, well, I had two kids to drive me. Hey, Dad, what's happening with that book?
Oh.
And then it becomes embarrassing to say, I haven't started yet. So one day, just sit down at the computer and start it. And as my fellow authors know, that's when it really begins, right? So,
yes, yes.
And accountability. I say that a lot.
yes.
I work with authors. If you're going to write a book, tell people, because then they're going to aim you into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can
that
only
goes
use
for
so many
everything, right?
excuses for so long.
Well, I
You know,
tried.
you know, like, oh, my computer's
not to
broken.
tell
Oh, I
anyone.
need a typewriter ribbon. Typewriter. Who uses a typewriter? I mean, my dog was sick. There are only so many excuses you can play with before. Fine, I'll write the stupid book.
You have to write it. Now, Krishna, do they like the books?
They do, actually. They're the biggest fans. So, I wrote for an audience of 2. And if my 2 sons read it, mission accomplished. But then, when it got published and other readers came on board, and, many of them are their friends, because the target audience was really their age when I started writing. It was kind of the late teens, early 20s, young adults. So it was a good way to test ideas and so on. And they gave me a lot of suggestions. I remember the first book went through, so many rewrites, right? And my older son gave me 22 pages of comments. Very detailed comments. Kids are going to like this, they're not going to like that. You need more. Poor dad. Where's the romance here? Come on, you just talk about the girl and then she vanishes. We need more of that. Yeah.
Critics.
Yeah,
Real
very,
critics.
very constructive criticism, for which I was really, really grateful for.
Wow. And I think that's the best one. It's coming from home.
Exactly.
So that's kind of like the best critic. Like, yes, give it to me straight, and then that's your children. So of course, whatever they say, like, okay, I take it. We're stuck into our children, I tell you.
Our family never even read the book. So.
Right.
I think that's fabulous. So now, does this mean you're working on book 3, or did it?
I am. So it's the final part of the trilogy. So in the first book, he starts off as a young prince and he's a spoiled brat. You don't really like him in the first few chapters. And then it's a coming of age story because he travels with this teacher of his. There's a terrorist event at the palace, so he has to leave the palace and travel around the planet. And so he kind of grows, and we bring him back at the end of the first book as a teenager who's kind of matured a bit. The second book is all set on a college campus, Nujran and the corpse in the Quadrangle. So the Quadrangle is, on a campus. Many of you have visited the Ivy League schools. Stanford's not far from where I live. So I just described campuses that I knew. It's a university student. I've just started writing the third book, and he's now an exchange student. He's left Fallen Ark, which is California, and he's arrived in Nadii, which is an anagram of India. So I've started the third book in India, and he's going to have his adventures in India and China, which are actually Nadii and Incheya in my books. But
nice. I like it.
You recognize them, yeah. And these are countries I've traveled in and so on. So there's a little bit of the travel drama as well going on in the midst of it.
We're all travel buffs here, so we're all
exactly.
That's it. Now
take a traveling body right here.
Absolutely. So where does the writing happen? Do you dedicate a certain time every day that you're going to be writing, or do you just wait until inspiration hits you? How does this work for you?
Okay, so about 4 or 5 years ago, I was actually assigned, I work for a company, so I'm not a practicing cardiologist anymore. I work for a company that makes medical devices, and they assigned me to Asia. So I was on a plane, twice a month. San Francisco to Singapore is a bit longer than San Francisco to New Zealand, Chris. It's a 16-hour, 40-minute trip, right? And, I was starting to do a lot of these trips and just watching a lot of movies, and then when you land and you get ready for work, you think, my God, that was a long flight, and I slept and I ate and I watched movies and I didn't do very much. So I thought, I wanted to write the movie. I want to write the book. My kids are pushing me. So why don't I use these trips to start writing? And then I started writing 2 or 3 pages on every flight. And 18 months later, I had the first novel in late 2017. So that's how the first novel happened. The second novel was also almost entirely written until COVID hit, on long transcontinental flights. And now that I can't travel, I actually have a sofa, which is a little bit out of the camera to the left of me, that reclines like a seat on the plane, you know. So I have my glass of red wine with me, a Sangiovese or a Merlot. I have this reclining seat. It's all very quiet, and it mimics the cocoon of, an airplane. And I find that's when the thoughts seem to flow. So
Wow.
there you go.
That's impressive.
If we could
Thank
change
you.
like the pressure in your room so your ears pop.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. And have, set up a PA system there.
Yes.
Announcements every few minutes. Yeah.
Please fasten your seatbelt.
Please
Yeah,
fasten your
exactly.
seatbelt.
Exactly. Pretend there's a little. Yeah,
Have somebody in a
sorry,
chair in front of you that's pushing back onto you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're laying on you. You're like, oh God, that guy again, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it was all part of the, the meditation of flying. So it's fairly quiet up there, particularly on these long flights. Everybody around you is asleep, and you drink and you eat, and there's nothing much else to do. So I thought, turn it into something useful, and I wrote. So.
Okay, I have to admit, when I asked you the question to bring me to that place where you write, I never thought I was going to get such. I was like, on my laptop, right behind me. No, I'm loving this.
Yeah. No, it was 35,000 feet on United Airlines.
Elevation, way up.
Elevation, yeah.
United Airlines plug. You should get some free miles.
I should get some free miles just for saying that.
Miles.
Yeah.
United Airlines doesn't give up those free miles for anything.
No, yeah. Right, yeah.
That's fantastic. So book 3, we need to get rid of COVID because he doesn't have enough of depressurization.
No, but I managed to recreate the atmosphere at home.
He's going to do it in home.
Well, yeah, it's coming along well. I've written 3 chapters out of a planned 25, so it's coming along. So hopefully I'll have it out end of this year. That's the goal, at least.
Okay.
Fantastic. Now, did you know when you started that this was going to be a trilogy? Or did that?
I did not until I finished the first book, and then the story was incomplete. You see, I mean, the character's grown from a baby to a teenager. And, okay, I've said something, but there's still a lot of the story to be told. And I love trilogies. The Lord of the Rings is a trilogy, and the Bourne trilogy, the Matrix trilogy. Lots of good things come in trilogies. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I thought I'd write another, and it's motivation as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and
I totally
agree. The second was easier than the first, and the third is a little bit easier than the second, isn't it? I mean, wonder what my fellow authors think, but
I think when you get to the second one, you have more flowing. The energy flows more because the first one is where you struggle and like, okay, let me try to put you together, and you try to create that person. But when you get to the second book, you already familiarize yourself with the first set of people. So you know how to flow. The energy start flowing there in the second book. Third book, probably melted butter.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
It's like meeting old friends again, right? So,
yeah. It's like, hey, how you doing? All right, I remember you. Good.
Yeah.
And then you start writing.
Absolutely. Now, Verona, is that speaking from a place of knowledge? Because are you free enough to?
Yes, I'm going to agree totally with Krishna because that is the same story. It's almost the same story.
Okay,
wow.
Tell us a little bit about are you free enough? Well, fill us in on 1 also, and then bring us up to snuff on 2. Who is
right? So I started 1, and the thing is, I'm a writer. I'm not calling myself a published author. I'm a writer. I write literally every single day. I write. I've been writing ever since I can remember holding a pencil in my hand. So I'm passionate about writing, very passionate about writing. I raised 1 daughter and I enforced her. I put it in her, you must learn how to do reading and writing. So those things came back and slapped me right in my face. Yeah, so now that she's grown, she's 26 years old. My daughter is 26. And I said, now I shall raise myself.
Oh,
yes.
Good. Now I was going to ask you how old your daughter was, whether or not she read your book.
I'm not sure she read my book yet.
Why did you fill in our gentleman about your book?
Because book 1, I started book 1 based on sex, love, and reality. That was book 1 intent. Sex, love, and reality. And the reason why I said that, I'm a big, big, big fan of Dr. Ruth. If you're familiar with Dr. Ruth, I grew up watching Dr. Ruth. So I love Dr. Ruth. I love her energy. I love the way she talk about sex. I love sex. So I talk about it. I love to encourage people to have sex, like Dr. Ruth. So I consider myself the little Dr. Ruth. So when I decided to write book 1, I said, it took me about 10 titles to come up with Are You Free Enough? I had to search myself when I was writing. And then I realized I wasn't free enough. I was not free at all. And my pen and my papers were saying, yes, you are free. So I went and I let loose in book 1. But then I realized it was getting too much. And I said, oh, I couldn't manage it because I felt my freedom was overpowering me. So I left it as a cliffhanger. But it's very explicit in book 1. Very explicit, because what I did, I wanted it to be relatable. It's a romance novel, and I deliberately left no names at all in book 1. So I created everybody as pronouns, he, she, and them. So you could include yourself in there if you wish.
Nice.
That is the whole point. Include yourself in there. However, there's a little inspirational going on because I'm all about inspirational stuff. I love motivation. I love inspirational stuff. So I kind of include a little inspiration in there. And I'm a poet by heart. I love poets. So I included that in there. But most of the content in book 1 is very explicit. Very, very explicit. So I said, okay, here we go. I left it as a real cliffhanger. And everybody hunting me down. Where is book 2? Because you left us hanging like a little puppy with our tongue hanging out saying, what happened to the main characters? So a year later, here I am with book 2.
There you are.
You wrote it in a year.
A year later.
Wow,
Yes.
I'm impressed. That is wow.
Yes,
I
a
would
year later.
say I wrote a book in a year. That's amazing.
Yes. And it was easy.
Her fans were nagging her.
They were nagging me.
That's totally fair. Yeah.
They were nagging me. They were nagging me, but I was nagging myself also.
Yeah.
I was nagging myself because I kept saying, something is missing from me. I'm still not feeling my full freedom.
Sure.
I'm not empowering myself to put up my most potential. I know I could write this. I could do this. So I had to encourage myself.
Verona, you said you've written all your life. How did you decide on the content? Was it content you'd written about before, or was this new when you started the book?
Well, because I said it was sex, love, and reality. The reality
Right.
part is stuff that I experience, stuff that you experience, stuff that all of us experience. So I wanted it to be a universal thing, not only my story. I wanted it to be everybody's story. I look at it, and what happened, the main story is about an affair, a married man having an affair with a young girl. That's not new.
No.
It's something that's been going on as long as I can remember. You see this everywhere. So why not put it in writing? And what I did, I described the entire relationship as it is. You're a married man, you're grown. Here is this young, sassy, sexy girl. And the way you look at her and the enticement and all of that, I am going to throw it in there. So I made the book very, very plain and simple. Very detailed as you can see the color of their clothes.
Yeah.
I didn't put a location in the book because I didn't want a location in the book, because I want you in India, I want you in China, I want you in New York to put yourself in that position. Sure. And create your own scene. So when I describe something, you should say, oh, I think that's India. Oh, I think that's New York. But I am not going to tell you where it is. I'm a traveler. I love traveling. So when I travel, I see things. Unlike you, Krishna, I'm inspired by the height of the plane.
Great.
When I get in the plane, my inspiration heightened. So
Right.
I would go somewhere, I would go to Italy and I would see lovers walking. And I would describe how those lovers are walking in the pace. And I bring it over in my story.
All right. Well, which means we got to get back to Italy and all those other
Yes.
places.
Well, there's a city over there called Verona, and I had the opportunity to visit.
Yeah.
Were you named?
Hence the name.
Yes, Verona, and that's my name.
Yep. The city of Romeo and Juliet.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So of course, I'm all about love.
Absolutely.
I'm all about love. So that's a city of love. So I went there. I had a lot of inspiration there.
Right.
So when I did book two, it was juicy. I love books. It was juicy because what I did in book two, what I did basically, I asked the readers, what is it that they want? I asked them what they want because they're nagging me. So let me know what is it that you want. They wanted names and they wanted to know more about the main characters. So I brought that to them and I made it very, very plain in book two.
All right. Now
what they asked for and more.
Book three?
Book three. I wouldn't say it's book three as a trilogy like Krishna. It's a spin-off.
Okay.
Ah, okay.
It's a spin-off because book two gave a lot of information. There's a lot of things going on in book two. So I'm going to do a spin-off.
Okay.
From book two.
Now, Verona, where do you write? Do you have a whole pseudo airplane set up in your house also?
No. I wish I did. I wish I did.
You know, a lot of people are out there right now. They just turned us off and they're building their own airplane.
I'm telling you, no. What I write everywhere. I write everywhere. The main thing for me, I must have music.
Okay.
Ah, okay.
I must have music. So if I am on the train, of course, I'm in New York, I take public transportation. I'm always writing on my little notepad in my phone. Or there's a notebook in my bag. So I have to have my music playing in my ears. Or I'm looking at someone standing in the train. And as soon as I look at that person standing in the train, something's gonna pop and I write. So I'm a writer. I just love writing.
Oh, I love hearing that. I absolutely love hearing that. Well, if Krishna was here to entertain us and maybe Verona to excite us, I think Chris is here to terrify us.
Oh, what a thriller.
Where Chris wrote this book, but I'm afraid it probably wasn't a laptop because he may never want to look at another screen again the way this book was going. So Chris, get us involved in screens and what inspired this?
Okay, so first off, I wanted to say to Verona and Krishna, I completely understand. Both of you said something that really leapt out at me, which is you had this shift in your life where your kids had grown and you were like, you know what about me? What about my time? This is my time to shine, right? Not shine in like celebrity sense, but like, this is my moment in life. I'm now, and I love that because that's something I've been a writer my whole life, much like you've run. I've been a writer my entire life, but I really, when my son moved out, which was about 3.5 years ago. So he's 21 and my daughter's going to be, no, he's 22 and my daughter is going to be 26. When he moved out, the same thing, right? It's like, no, this is my moment and I'm going to throw myself into my writing. And Verona, I really love that you said it was a way for you to explore yourself because that's something that I always had wanted as a writer. So screens. So about, God, it's got to be going back 10 years. I decided that I wanted to write a series of pieces, which were one for each of the 7 deadly sins. And I called the series The 7 Coins Drowning, as in 7 coins drowning in a pool. Like somebody throwing coins in a wishing well, but they're drowning instead. And I wrote the first 4 of them. And they were great. I love them. I still am very proud of them. They're on Amazon. They're really fun and interesting. They're unique takes on each of the 7 deadly sins. And then I wrote Screens, and I wrote Screens as a novella, and I finished it, and I did what I always do. I put the book down and I walked away for 3 weeks, and I came back and I picked it up. I read it again, and I read through and I was like, that didn't work out so well. It's not that it wasn't good. It was that it just kind of went along, and then it was like, and the end. And the story finished. I was like, that's not enough. So I kept going, and I kept going, and I kept going. And here we are 5 years later. 5 years and 9 rewrites later. I feel so sorry for Victor Hugo, who took 20 years to write Les Miserables. I mean, bastard. But anyway, Screens. Yeah, Screens came, I think, without giving too much of the book away, the book is about, it's about addiction. It's about the evil of addiction. And it's primarily focused, it's about all kinds of addiction, but it primarily focuses in on our digital addiction, upon our desperate addiction to like social media and to video games and television and mobile phones and more and more. Everywhere you go, there's people just staring at these things. And I started to notice that about 4 years ago when I wrote the novella version. I was on a train. I was in the Bay Area going to a conference, a technical conference from New Zealand. So they flew me over to my hometown, my old hometown, to go to this conference. And I was on a Muni train, and I looked around. I was like, man, there is not a human being on this train except for me and that old lady over there who is not on a screen. And we've all seen it, right? We all see it. We see it nowadays everywhere, right? Like people, this one blows me away. People crossing roads, like crossing the street. You're like, you realize those zooming things can kill you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the blank expression. And we've all done it too. We've all been that person who just like can't, for whatever reason, we get excited and we can't stop looking at our phone. So I wrote Screens as, that was part of it, was about digital addiction. But the other part of it was that I've been a fan, and I have read and written a lot of sort of what I guess you would call dark science fiction mixed with maybe cosmic horror. So like that sort of dark, slightly twisted science fiction. And that would always been something I had loved. And I wanted to bring them together. And so to kind of spell the highest premise of the book, my protagonist, whose name you only know as James, is a ex-heroin addict, alcoholic bike messenger in San Francisco in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he's in his 30s, and his life isn't really going anywhere. He's gotten off heroin, but he's a drunk. And through a series of misadventures, which feel a little bit like a detective novel, he stumbles his way into finding this. He finds out about this murder of this occult writer in the 30s. And from there, he discovers this drug that this occult writer had been taking. And he decides he's going to take it. He's like, yeah, I got to find it and take it. Right? Great thing that an ex-junkie / addict / drunk needs to do is find another drug. And in taking this drug, he discovers that humanity is being fed upon, that these horrific otherworldly things from this other dimension are feeding on humanity through our screens. So that as people are staring at their screens, these things are draining energy out of us and infecting us with this blue energy that he calls the blue ichor. And humanity is being slowly drained and turned into something else, something awful. But he's the only one who can see this, right? So yeah, this guy's got credibility, right? He's an alcoholic, ex-heroin addict bike messenger. And the story then goes from there. And he delves deeper and deeper, goes further down the rabbit hole. So yeah, for me, the biggest thing is it's an exploration of this moment in history that we find ourselves. We find ourselves at this turning point with our technology. And do not get me wrong, I am not a Luddite. I love technology. I've been in IT for decades. But the book is about, like, are we doing the right thing here? Like, are we not getting too far down the rabbit hole with our addiction? And this is coming from a man who was an addict, from someone who did have addictions. What I see, and I think what a lot of us see, but we don't really talk about as much as we should, is that maybe we've gone too far with it. Maybe we need to like it's okay to have technology. It's okay to use these things, but maybe not have our foot on the gas so hard. Maybe if you look at the opioid epidemic that hit America, right? Opioids, they're a very useful tool. When someone is in great pain from surgery or cancer, whatever it is, it's a great tool. But once it goes too far, it's not a tool anymore. It becomes something dangerous and toxic.
A dependency, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes a dependency. So that's what the book's about. And it's, Stephanie, I hope I did and didn't creep you out too much. I hope I did, because that's kind of what I'm going for.
No,
But
that's
anyway.
okay. That's okay. I'm here to be creeped out, man.
I'm
I
glad.
absolutely also just want to ask you about your cover, because your cover art is just wow.
Yeah, that cover, Chris.
Oh, thanks. It's creepy, hey.
Yeah.
Very creepy. Very good. Very creepy. Yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
you know what? It made a statement.
It does. Yeah, I feel like it really does. Thank you.
It made a statement. It really did, because I look at it this way. Like when you look at your cover like that, basically you're looking at phone, mobile, but nobody's picking up a book.
Yeah.
Nobody's like, to pick up a book right now is so odd for somebody to walk around, pick up a book. When I was raising my daughter, it was so strange. And I said my daughter is 26. So when I was raising my daughter, everywhere she went, she had a book in her hand. And it was strange. It was strange to so many people looking at her. Here goes this little girl with a book in the train, turning pages and turning pages. And now I think the percentage of children picking up a book is so slim.
It's getting small, yeah.
It is so slim, and they got so spoiled onto technology. They got so spoiled onto these devices that it's taking them. It's literally sucking their brain.
Yeah, that's what Chris is getting at. Is it's
interesting, Verona, because your daughter's 26, and Krishna, how old are your boys?
26 and 24. So I was going to say, we all have kids of the same age.
Yeah, so
and there you go. Oh, yeah.
It's interesting because I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term future shock, but
Alvin Toffler. Yeah.
Alvin and Sarah Toffler wrote this book in the 70s, which was she actually did a lot more of the work than Alvin Toffler did.
Ah, okay. Not surprised. Yeah, yeah.
A huge amount of the work. But in essence, the idea is that technology will go so far and people get freaked out. They're like, whoa, too much. And they'll regress socially to something that's more human, for lack of a better term. And it's interesting because within our kids' generation, you're seeing this sort of backlash against technology amongst some of them, a percentage of them, where like they want to play tabletop games again, right? They love rolling dice. They don't want to use computer screens. They love like bookstores. If you go into old used bookshops, it's full of kids in our kids' generation.
Yes.
Because they've seen enough of this, you know, they see it all the time. And so there is a backlash, which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're even doing records. Vinyl is made of.
Yeah, vinyl, exactly.
Yeah, vinyl. Yeah.
Yeah. My kids recently bought the old record player, and
There you go.
my old vinyls, which I haven't kept. Yes.
Of putting the needle on, and I said,
yes,
balanced a penny on top.
Yeah, and when they do that in the digital format now, they're adding in the scratchy noise to make it sound real.
There you go.
Yeah.
So it's really sad, and I think it's so sad for this generation of the way, Chris, you did such an excellent job, because I think it's so sad for this generation where they're so sucked into their mobile devices that it's for me, it's heartbreaking. Yeah. I think it's so heartbreaking, and it goes back to my title, like they're not free. They're like prisoners to their devices. And I think I don't know what we as writers have to do to convince them. But Chris, I think you did an excellent job with your book.
Thank you very much.
I think you did an excellent job, because I think the message you are putting out there would be a more convincing message to them, that you cannot be hostage to your devices. And that's where the problem is. They have become hostages to their devices, that they can't wink, they can't do nothing. They sleep with their phones in their hand. They're talking with their phone in their hand. They're eating with their phone in their hand. They don't know how to go outside and have a good conversation because they're looking at their devices. I just experienced a young boy, he's probably 16 years old. Let me throw this in there. I'm a youth mentor. So I try to follow up on my youth of what they are accomplishing. And one of my youth, I was so sad. I was really, really sad about this because he failed his exam. Why? He couldn't spell an English word because he was typing it, he was writing it as if he was texting.
Oh, no.
And he failed his English class. And I was so distraught. I said, no way. I will not accept that. Your device is not everything. It's the world, but it's not everything. You have to learn to look in your book, pick up your pencil, pick up your pen, and practice writing properly. It's not. It's really heart-rending.
I agree.
Chris, you're an American living in New Zealand. So is the New Zealand part the sort of glorious isolation that gave you the right environment to write, or is it incidental to the whole process for you?
It's a little bit incidental. I've been writing since I was about 10. God, I would hate to see some of those stories. Well, maybe one or two of them. But I've been writing my entire life. I went to writing school in San Francisco. I got into IT because there's, as we all know, there's an old joke amongst writers: once a writer, always a waiter.
Uh-oh.
We all know it, right? When I needed a job, I had kids, or I was having a family, I needed a job, and I was good at IT, so I got into IT. And again, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against technology at all. I think technology is wonderful. I think it has changed all our lives. We're having this moment because of
technology.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pros and cons.
Yeah, I'm not a Luddite in any way. But so as far as the journey to New Zealand, when we came to New Zealand, San Francisco was already starting to turn into sort of overgrown, overblown, overexpensive place that it is now. There's still great parts of San Francisco, but it kind of looks like Facebook threw up on it nowadays. It's just, IT as far as the eye can see, everything's about the IT game. And so when I moved to New Zealand, I'd written a novel that I'm actually going back and reworking next. But after finishing that novel, I was like, you know what? I want to write something completely different from what I wrote. And thus I got into these stories about the 7 deadly sins.
Wow. Yeah. There is something good to be said about about technology, in one's relationship with kids, though. And Verona, you have a daughter, right? I have 2 sons, and sons go through a stage between the age of about 12 and 18, where their entire communication is monosyllables, right?
I have 11 nephews. Yeah.
There you go. So they'd come back from school, and I'd ask them, "How was school?" "Fine." "Did you learn anything?" "Nothing much."
No.
Then I found that when I texted them the same question, I would get a paragraph in reply.
Oh yeah.
So during those 6 or 7 years, I preferentially used in those days, the cell phone. They had flip phones.
Yes.
They'd text me these elaborate paragraphs about what they'd done at school and their friendships and the tournaments they were participating in, none of which I could get out of them verbally. Since then, they've improved remarkably. They're both in the performance arts. They're both down in LA. They're both great public speakers and all that. But during that period when, they were a bit out of reach from me in terms of communication, technology saved me then.
Yeah, seriously. I was lucky I could get a grunt out of my teenage son.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I'd be like, "Morning." That a human noise you just made? What was that?
Yeah.
My teenage son is running a Twitch stream business upstairs right now. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's
Not
that.
surprising.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. The other thing that happened was they added me as their Facebook friend when they were about 14 or 15 or something, respectively, and they forgot about it. So for years, I was tracking their activity on Facebook and having a great time being part of this group, and they kind of forgot.
You were stalking your own
You're
children.
stalking.
That's right. That's right. In a nice way.
We understand. All of us get it. I did the same thing.
Okay, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay, well, before the pandemic, I used to track my own kids with the Starbucks app.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
App, I get a ping and I'd say, "Oh, 6th Avenue and 55th Street."
Very clever, very clever. Yeah.
Yeah, like, what are you doing there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what'd you buy for $26 at Starbucks?
That's right. What did you buy? What did you pay $54 at Starbucks for? Mom, stop stalking me.
Yeah. But you know, as with you,
Yes.
I was just going to say we probably owed them a lot because you know, I probably wouldn't have written were it not for them. You know, I grew up in India and I come from a very scientific family. There's doctors and so on. There's literature on my mom's side, and there's kind of science and medicine on my dad's side. And me and my brothers, we've spent our lives like a lot of Indian Americans in medicine or engineering.
Yeah.
My sons went to school here. My older son graduated from cinema at Berkeley, and my younger son graduated in cinema from USC. And I thought, man, these guys are following their dreams, you know, they're doing what they want to do. So it kind of came back to me in a positive sort of way saying, you know, there's still time to pursue the dream. You know, I probably wanted to be a novelist when I was 15 and that wasn't open to me. So better late than never, right? So
That's right.
That's right. Everyone's following your dream right now. The kids are grown and flown.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's you.
And I feel so free.
Yeah.
Doing what I'm doing. I feel
Right.
so free. I spent so many years with my daughter. We travel all over. We did everything. So she was like my shadow. So now I'm literally feeling Verona. And I'm saying, I am here. I am Verona. I am not mommy anymore. Because you have no name. You never a name. You're just mommy or mom. So you don't have a name. So now I know my name.
I think to me, it's amazing to watch people in our age range taking this dream on. It's so amazing to see other people doing the same thing, because, you know, we live in a culture that's not just a culture, but civilizations that are very much driven by this image of youth and about youth culture and about do things when you're young. And it's funny because one of my best friends in the world, he was raised by his grandmother, and his grandmother said, nah, 20s, no way, would never do it again. 30s, like she would say to him, life begins at 45. That's when the best starts. That's when you really can be yourself and do your own thing, and you're confident enough and you don't care what other people think anymore. And it's funny because when he told us this story in our 20s, we were all like, 40? But
That's
now
so
we're
old.
like, yeah, grandma knew what she was talking about, you know? Following our dreams, you know, and it's great to be doing that, showing people that it's okay to do that when you're older. You don't have to just be like, well, I lived my life, so now it's over. I love to see artists and writers and people of all walks of life, whatever they want to do. I love to see people a little in their middle age and getting older, still pursuing dreams, or actually starting to pursue dreams.
Yes. Yes.
And I have authors I work with who are 70s, 80s. Two of my authors are in their 90s.
Wow.
Right.
And
Amazing.
by the way, one of them just wrote a sex book. So
Wow.
Fantastic.
There you
Fantastic.
go.
Yeah.
And you know what? She probably sat there and wanted to do that all her life.
Yeah.
She's been waiting to do that. And she probably was so locked into herself, maybe by her culture, her parents, or community. She probably was so locked in. And now she said, I want to live my life and do just that.
Nice.
So as a physician, I'll tell you that if you follow the Viagra data in the United States, you know that the most sexually active people in the United States are our retirees in Florida.
That's right.
Viagra is sold.
Yes, absolutely.
The highest rate of STDs, by the way.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
Exactly. Yep. Penicillin and Viagra sell very well.
Yes.
In Florida.
I just happened to be looking, Verona, you mentioned men having affairs, and I'm not here to throw men under the bus.
Me either.
I just happened to be looking at some statistics about marital affairs, and the percentage of men having affairs actually goes up, and 24% of the married men over 80 are having an affair.
Wow.
Okay.
I've not realized that. Yeah.
Oh, and that's serious.
Yeah.
And that's what I did in my second book. Because when I did in my second book, I kind of like put an age gap in the second book.
Right, right.
Because in the first book, there was no age. It was just this married man and this young girl. In the second book, I detailed that he was now in his 70s.
Yeah.
He was up in age.
Yeah, it's legit.
And she was this young girl, and she's still up there, but he was now way up in age. And he was still in love with her.
Okay, so
and he had the chance to be in an affair with her. Yes, he would.
Yeah, if anyone's
So
looking,
it's still going on.
yes, there's plenty here.
It's going on, yes. And that's the reason why I like the book. Not because I wrote it, but I like it because it's relatable. It is relatable because as a senior citizen, we call them the golden age, they can say, oh yes, I like that young girl over there. You know, it's very rare that a woman gonna do that, but most likely a male is gonna come back down and say, I like that young sexy lady right there, and just snatch her up.
There's a great old political aphorism in the United States about Democrats and Republicans, and it goes like this: whenever there's a controversy amongst Republican politicians, it's about money. Whenever there's a controversy among Democratic politicians, it's about sex. That's why there are more Democrats than Republicans. You're like, okay, the money, okay, greedy, I don't know. But it's like, you slept with a woman or slept with a man? Yeah, I kind of get it. I might not agree with you. Probably shouldn't have had a wife when you did it, but no, I get it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, we did that.
I can relate a little bit, you know?
We need the expat to get American politics in 2 sentences.
Exactly. You have to travel all this distance to get it from.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
You three are unbelievably inspiring. I don't know what I think our viewers are doing, building an airplane hangar in their house, maybe going out and having affairs to see what it's like. I don't know what they're doing right now.
They're testing the water.
They're testing the waters, but certainly they know that life did not end at 40.
That's right.
Right.
And if they're at our age, they know that life just began.
Life,
That's right.
yeah.
Getting started.
So any of those young people watching today's show, the best is so much yet to come.
I agree.
Indeed. Here, here.
I agree.
Now, could you just remind our viewers where we can find your books? Krishna, where should we go to find your books, and what other books are we finding? Should we read the first one first, I guess?
Yes, the first one is the Prince of Typgar is the series, and the first one is Nujran and the Monks of Mirar. This is the second one you have on the screen now. They are on Amazon, they are on iBooks, they're on Google Books, Google Play, all the usual sites out there.
All the usual fabulous places, but we'll start with book 1 and work our way up.
Great.
Verona, should we start with book 1 with Are You Free Enough, or can we jump right in?
Book 1, what I'm doing with book 1 is still floating, but I'm about to relaunch it. So it's still floating.
Okay.
It's still floating on all the major platforms.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's only on Amazon.
Okay. Terrific. Just so we know where we can find stuff.
Yes.
And Chris, if we're brave enough to turn on a computer, where are we finding this?
All the usual places. You can get it on Kindle. My daughter actually said that the Kindle version scared the hell out of her, which made me. So you can get it on Kindle. You can get it paperback as of January 26th. Book comes out January 26th. And then it's going to be available in all bookshops, the usual, as both Verona and Krishna said, the usual places. It'll be available everywhere.
Places. And by the way, print books are still outselling digital books. Like,
good to know.
Absolutely. You know, people thought that print was going to be dead once they had Kindles. It's at least by 4 to 1 that the print books are outselling. Many authors I work with actually make more money on their Kindle books because your profit margins are higher. So it's always good to release on both. But yes, people still want to have a book in their hand, Verona. They absolutely.
Yes, and I totally agree. I think there's something about book in your hand. There's a spiritual connection between you and your book. Absolutely. I find that to be a connection. It's more life when you have that book in your hand. You're turning that page, you're smelling the pages, you're feeling that. It's something. There's a connection between you and your words. There's a relationship.
absolutely
When
is.
you have something stuck in your ears and you're listening to Kindle, it's like, okay, somebody's reading a book. Yeah, sometimes it's good for you to read to somebody, but you want to hold that book. That book is a baby. That book is a child. That book is you. That book is life.
Well, I'm glad all of your books are available in all the different ways.
All formats.
All formats the books are coming out. And I mean, sometimes it's just easier to press the button and poof, it appears. I get that. But, you know, at least in this part of the country, Amazon's been pretty quick at delivering things too. So.
Yes.
Great. Yeah.
I thank the three of you so much for joining me here. And please promise me that when your next book comes out, you will join us again.
Yes, thank you,
Indeed.
Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie, for having us. Thank you.
You guys.
Yeah, keep me posted with
Likewise.
any events or book things that I could send out to all of our viewers. And thanks for joining us, everyone, on the.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for the
Krishna
invitation.
and Christopher, thank you for coming too.
Nice meeting you too, Verona and Chris.
Yes.
Yeah,
Take
care,
care.
you guys. Good meeting you.
Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit BetweenTheCoversTV.com. By the way, at BetweenTheCoversTV.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.